How's it going, everybody? This is Sherrod Seward, managing member at Innovative Immigration Law, also known as Sherrod Sports Visas, where we do O1, P1s, EB1A for the best athletes, entertainers, minds, and companies around the world. And right now we have a power hitter, one of the best, well, actually the best agent in MMA and now the NFL as well. And the agent of David Njoku. He locked him up for us. Let's go. Pro Bowl. Malki Kawa. Let's bring him in.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Pro Bowl. I'm doing great. I forgot all about that.
Yeah. He had a hell of a year this year, didn't he?
He sure did. Turns out all we had to do was throw him the ball. You know?
Amazing how that works, isn't it?
Right. And especially like in motion, I think he does really well when he gets it. We can act like they're running the short routes and turning around and giving it to him. And it's like, well, he weighs 260 pounds. He's not like a little guy that can shift like he's, Tyreek Hill. So I think we got him moving in motion, which helped his yak. And boy, we needed that.
It really did. No, they had a really good year this year. Hopefully next year they can do, they can build on that and do better. You know what I mean? So
right. So I'm gonna set it up for the people that don't know, because I'm gonna put this on the LinkedIn where they have a lot of like techies out there. They might not know about sports as much, but Malki came up in the real estate game, and then he got into mixed martial arts management, where he's
Nope. I actually came up in the real estate game and became a football agent first. Everybody always says I'm an MMA agent, and that became football, and that's not true. I actually got certified in 2005 in the NFL. And started working in MMA in 2008. It's just that the clients I represented in MMA were really, really big clients, multiple champions. So everybody looked at it like it was an MMA agency and not the truth, which is a multi-sport, faceted agency. But, it's all good.
But I think that's nuanced because, dealing with the CBA and the nuances in football, I imagine there's a lot more moving components and just a lot of people to deal with and rules than there were in MMA. So do you think by dealing with football first, it helped you think outside the box of everybody else when you came into doing MMA?
Yeah, because MMA was very much the wild, wild west, and the NFL having a union makes it very, very structured. So just from the perspective of an agent, I'm the first one to come in there with a contract that was open-ended to where you could terminate at any time. A lot of guys were locked into these contracts that had them signed to guys for 5 and 10 years. So because of my experience in the NFL, where that's not how it is, I came and told guys, look, this is what I got, the best fighter in the world signed, right? I'll do you. First, because NFL players on, I'd come to the best in the MMA and just say, hey, this is what these guys got. Basketball, MMA, baseball, it's all the same. You can fire me anytime you want, but you still have to pay me for what I do. So if I do your contract, you got to pay me. And guys love that because if they didn't want to be with us for whatever reason, they can get up and go. Most guys I have still to this day have had their whole entire careers, and they basically are on a deal where they can leave anytime they want.
So from the evaluating talent side, did you do that yourself, or did you have somebody to tell you who's a beast and who's not?
Well, no. It depends. In MMA, I have a bunch of guys that work with me. When I first started, it was just me, and I would just dove into fights, and I'd watch them all the time. I'd watch guys. I remember watching John Jones and knowing he was going to be the best. Like I can evaluate fight talent really well. Football, my relationships with guys in the NFL, I just ask the scouts. They'll tell you who's who and who's not. It's not what you see with Mel Kiper. It's not what you guys think you see on TV. Just because a guy rushes for a lot of yards, it's not how it works. So in NFL, you gotta have to talk to the guys who are making the decisions to determine whether or not the guy that you're looking at is actually a draftable prospect.
Got you. Now, do you have a preference when it comes to dealing with, I guess, draft picks as opposed to guys that are moving on to their second contract? Or do you
repeat that one more time? Oh, you came in and out. Say it again.
I know some agents that they prefer to deal with guys that are coming on their second contracts and do not pay as much attention to the draftees. But for you, is it kind of like both? Do you have one that you enjoy better?
Dude, a client is a client, whether they're coming into their rookie year or they're coming into a second contract. You want to, listen, it's like having kids, right? You love all your kids the same, but you pay attention to the one that needs you the most that day. At the end of the day, that's kind of how I look at this. So whether you're going into a second contract or you're a rookie, it's my job. You know what I mean? So I pay attention to it, to both the same. Now, if you're asking me preference, there's something fun about taking a guy right out of college through the process, getting them drafted, being there on draft day, watching their emotions pour out, the natural raw emotion of finally making a dream come true. I think that's amazing. From a cost perspective, the guys on the second contract, you meet them, you sign them, you get a second deal. There's no, it's not the same. You know what I mean? The emotional aspect of it isn't there like that. Somewhat kind of, because they get a big contract. It's overwhelming, but you don't have to spend the money you spend on a rookie. Does that make sense? So if I didn't have to spend money and I could just make money, just if it was just my bottom line, then yeah, you'd rather do it that way. But I actually enjoy the rookie process.
Yeah. That's going to bring me to another thing. I just thought about this strategically. If you have unsigned free agents, they can get to their second contract quicker than the drafted athletes.
Well, the undrafted free agent is not, typically going to make it to a second contract, if that makes sense, right? Like, that's not the way that works. If they were that good, they would get drafted. There's guys that make it, but that's not necessarily the route you want to go as an agent. But I get guys undrafted, first round, in the middle, all over the place, so it doesn't really matter, if that makes sense.
But what if they're foreign and nobody knows they exist, but they're like monsters?
Yeah,
who could do that?
It would be a major advantage for somebody to have the ability to find guys that nobody can get their hands on.
Right. And then that's why I kind of strategic, because we're supposed to be talking about global migration. But you piqued my interest because you broke my imagination. I thought you were MMA into NFL. So when you said NFL to MMA,
most people don't get that part right, and I don't know why. I've said it since day one. I actually first got licensed as a football agent in 2005, and did MMA from that point forward. So,
what's right here? Do you have that in your bio?
I did. It's been there forever, but I don't know if anybody reads bios.
I try to do my research. So the reason I brought up, I was talking to Malki before we had this, is Malki on the MMA side, and a lot of the more sophisticated managers get this. There's a lot of advantages to getting visas for fighters through the agency. For one, a lot of times promotions can put undue pressure on fighters when they have the visa and tell them when the fight, when they're going to renew and all that.
Correct.
And also it kind of takes away their ability to negotiate if they have to wait on work authorization for somebody else. So what I was kicking around with Malki was, and we were talking about NIL deals too, to where college students can't get paid on visas, but they could get paid on work visas. So we're looking at the idea of taking the same visa structure we do in MMA, which is first round management will hold the visa, to do that also in football, because a lot of these foreign players end up on short-term, training camp visas, and you can't. And if they get cut, they have to go. You can't train to be a football player in Cambodia, right?
Right. 100%. So, I mean, listen, there's definitely an advantage to doing that, and obviously there's a bigger advantage to having attorneys like yourself accessible, that understand it and that know it. If anybody's watching this podcast, okay, I can tell you that we've been dealing with your friend. I can tell you, to the listeners, right, to the viewers, that I've been dealing with him. Well, I should go the other way. That way, yeah. On my screen, it's that way. I've been dealing with him now for, has it been over 10 years already?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, at least 10 years. He's the only guy I go to any visa issue. He's the only guy that I would trust to handle any visa issue. Matter of fact, it got to the point that he's so good at it, I introduced him to the UFC, and they started using him for their complicated cases and things that they needed to get expedited. He's the guy. So listen, whether you're an agent that's listening to this, or you're an athlete, whether it's a fighter or a football player, the one thing you definitely want is to have an agency that's looking at the big picture and not just, hey, I got you, the NFL got you the visa, let's go over there. And then you go in there and then you get cut, and then now you're back to whatever home country you came from, and you need to stay. So your agent should be willing to get you the visa and put it under their banner, so that way you can stay in the country and then go from there. And I think that's kind of like, when we sat and talked about this and you explained all the outcomes that people have, it made a lot of sense for us to do it the way we do it.
Yeah. And I think I appreciate that also. And I think the longevity comes with looking at longevity from the beginning. It's all about infrastructure, right? Whether it be visa infrastructure, relationship infrastructure, and just attention infrastructure. Like you said, hey, it don't matter if the contract's open-ended if they're dealing with us, because what it is.
Well, I mean, listen, here's the thing, though, right? Like the concepts are very simple. If you were in a relationship, right, and you didn't want to be in it, do you really want a contract that made you stay in it? You'd want to get out of it, right? And listen, somebody can kick, cry, and scream all day long. They can promise to change, promise to do this, promise to do that, and it's your choice to stay or go. In these contracts, if I signed you to a 5-year deal, I can do whatever I want. And I got you in a 5-year deal. As long as I do my end, offer you fights, get you fights, do this, do that. You can't go anywhere. And that's not the right thing to do. I think if somebody does not want to be with you, they shouldn't be with you. So to me, it was like, look, it's either I do my job and people stay, or I don't and they go. Sometimes they go for ridiculous reasons. Sometimes I deserved it. It is what it is. But that's kind of the reality of the life. I think this is the way it's supposed to be done, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but for me, I've had a very successful business doing it that same way. I know all the big sports do it that way. Boxing and MMA are the only ones where the contracts are long, and you know what I mean. You're owned by the agency or the promoter or whatever it be. And I'm just not. I don't agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate. I remember. I mean, I can talk about it now, but I'm from Ohio, and I went to law school in Cleveland, where I got introduced to MMA through NAAFS, which was, had a certain promoter that ended up managing Stipe Miocic and Cody Garbrandt for a little bit and stuff like that. And then I remember Stipe got a contract. He fought a couple times, and the next thing I know, I'm getting told he has an 8-fight contract, and I'm just like, he has a what?
Right. Yeah, but those were standard. Those were standard in the UFC at that time, though. Especially if you were looking for angling for more money or something to that effect, you ended up getting stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
But the one thing about the UFC, though, I got to give them a lot of credit. An 8-fight contract never always ended up being 8 fights. We with John's deals, we had 8 and 10-fight contracts, and they would get redone 3 fights in, 2 fights in, 4 fights in. It just depended on where we're at money wise and who we were fighting and what the deals were going to be or what they looked like. And it always worked out. I always, had tough negotiations with the UFC, but I always felt like they treated us in a certain way that was fair in a lot of ways. And it really, you could say it's unfair, and maybe in some cases it might have been, but it was always really left.
It just seemed on its face being locked in for that amount of, because I mean, 8 fights is.
Yeah, but you got to understand too, the Sherrod, like a lot of boxers, when you look at the boxing model, they get these fights and they get built up, right? 15, 16, 17 wins, and then they go fight somebody for real. The reality of it is that if you really believe that you're that good, right, and you think that you can promote yourself, why even sign to the UFC? You get where I'm coming from? Like, you look at it on the other side of the thing, they're the ones with the platform, they're the ones with the outlay, they're the ones who are promoting the fight. Now, I'm not championing for them. I'm not sitting here saying that they're right and fighters are wrong, because I'm never going to say that. But the reality of it is you need 2 parts for this thing to work. You need the fighters more than anything, and you need the promotion with the platform. And they built this business from scratch. And a guy who's 5-2, 6-1, 7-3 can still go on and be a multimillionaire in MMA. I don't know many boxers who are not undefeated getting title shots. I don't know many boxers who aren't 20-something and 0, 19-1, 23-2, something to that effect, that are getting title shots, right? In MMA, you could be 7-0 and get a title shot. You'd be 13-6 and get a title shot. You can still make pay-per-view, make money. So is the model perfect? No. Is it better than boxing? In some cases, yes. Some cases, no. But, I'm just telling you that an 8-fight contract, for me, signified that in 3-4 fights we'd get it done. And we always did. You get where I'm coming from? Now, if it's the idea of not going to free agency, the reality of it is, bro, a lot of guys, there wasn't a lot of options back then. You know what I mean? If you were making $3-4 million in the UFC, Bellator wasn't offering that. Bellator wasn't matching that. You had to really be something special for them to do that. So if you had a guy that some people, you know what I mean? Some people can, what do you call it? It would be all right. You know what I mean? So
that brings you 2 questions. You got time for 2 questions?
Yes, sir.
2 tough questions. So I'll give them to both. Like, well, let's go with the first one. So Bellator, off of Showtime. From what I understand, they're not operating in the United States right now. They're focused on Europe. Are you surprised by that? Like, what do you think? What do you think about that?
No, I listen. I don't. That's the PFL. Bellator is now owned by the PFL. So if they're operating in Europe, it's because they're building up the European series and the Challenger series that they have out there in Europe. But if I'm correct, they're going to be doing shows in the U.S., but I could be wrong. I mean, if that's what they're doing, then that they must have some sort of business strategy in Europe and the Middle East and all that I'm just not aware of at this moment.
Okay, so they were purchased by PFL,
Correct.
who has ESPN deal.
Right.
Here and how's the PFL doing? Like to in your opinion, are they is it a profitable business yet, or is it something where it's still in the investment phase? We don't know.
I have no idea. I know the Saudis just invested a whole bunch of money, and from what I know, they're doing good. Other than that, I have no idea. I'm not an investor. I'm not a shareholder. I don't get reports. I have no idea. I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Got you. But I know, sometimes the UFC, like you can go and see a report on what their revenue deal with ESPN was, but I've never seen a revenue deal on what it looks like with PFL. So,
listen, they put on fights. The checks cash. The fighters are happy. Everybody's good. So they're good with me. I like the PFL. They're good people, and I think they're going to be all right. So, I want everybody to be okay. I want everybody to be okay. To be honest with you,
I like that they seem to be very they're pliable. I saw that Francis. That's what my next question goes about Francis. But I saw Francis sign with them, and then we did business with Sleater Promotions, and I went to their shows when Clarissa Shields was fighting. Oh man, we were so scared. Like Clarissa Shields, I like her because she'll compete with anybody. She just wants to fight. She don't care what it is.
Right.
So I thought after the first time, I'm like, you learn your lesson. It's different out here. But she went back out there and did it. But kudos to the PFL that they were willing to do that deal. Now here's my next question: is I remember a couple years ago, it was about a good 5 years ago, and I was sitting across the table from Francis Ngannou, and he says, "I want to fight Tyson Fury," and I might have said, "No, you don't." I didn't even mean to say it. He looked at me like he's getting ready to kill me. But he went out and he set his deal out with the UFC. And then now he's kind of doing his things with Saudi Arabia. And when you said, if you can promote yourself, what is the benefit of, having a promoter? But I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that model where he really kind of like bet on himself.
He didn't bet on himself. Hold on, but that's different. What I said was, if you really like that, then go promote yourself. But I'm talking about from the ground up. He's who he is because he was the UFC champion. If they never put him on the stage, up until he fought in the UFC, you never heard of Francis Ngannou. He was a kickboxer before that, correct? You never heard of him. No one ever knew anything about him. So if we're being honest, what I mean by what I said was you can't be the guy that says, I'm coming here, I'm going to be brought up by you guys, promoted by you guys, put on the biggest stage by you guys, paid by you guys, and then turn around and pretend that I did all that by myself. 1,000% he did the right thing. Listen, he did the right thing. He fought his contract out. He sat it out. He did everything that was within the rules of his contract. He went on to something that he deems to be better, bigger and better. How can anybody be mad at that? I mean, listen, Dana's going to be upset and people are going to be mad, but he did what he did. You know what I'm saying? And God bless him. But to pretend that he got what he got because it was just him, you can't convince me of that. Because before the UFC, I got guys that make a lot more money than boxers and fighting. Who are, listen, they might be, 17-6 in MMA, right? Former world champ or whatever. Goes to boxing in his first fight. He's making $500,000 in boxing. Nobody in boxing makes $500,000 in their first fight. You know what I'm saying? $650 for this one, $350 for that, $450. They don't make that, right? For you to make that type of money, you got to be fighting for a belt most of the time. Talking about like one of those regional belts and stuff like that. Right. So you get what I'm saying? So it's the fact that he did what he did. God bless him, because what he did do. Let me tell you what he did. What he did was he did not re-sign. That's it.
And he had to
went on to somebody that wanted him. Right. But listen, if there was no PFL, and by the way, if there was no PFL, right? Maybe he still. Signs that he does because he signed the boxing deal as well.
Oh, we might have lost him.
Hold on, can you see me? Sorry about that. I got a phone call at the same time. He signed a boxing deal, and what I'm saying is that without boxing, without MMA, I don't know that he would have signed that boxing deal. He doesn't like Tyson Fury, and he's a very big star today because of everything that he's done. And kudos to him for doing it. I mean, it is what it is.
Did you see that fight? Did you see the fight with him? And
can't hear you. Hold on.
Okay. I'm gonna have me on mute.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I can't hear you.
Oh man, we lost him.
I don't know why.
It's all right. We can wrap it up. It's
Can't
okay.
hear you.
I give a text. Looked like we had some technical difficulties, but overall, I think it was a
Nope, can't
great
hear you. Let me
conversation.
see if there's something else here.
And
Hello,
I don't know
hello.
how to fix it. No, it's okay. We'll wrap it up. Try and tell them we'll
All
wrap
right,
it
I don't
up.
know what that means, but thank you for having me on the show.
Wrap it up.
If you can hear me, yeah, if you can hear me, thank you for having me on
Yeah.
the show. I'm sorry, I don't know why I can't hear you, but let me reiterate that the work you do is awesome because you give a lot of people opportunity to come to the U.S. to be in these promotions, the NFL. I think you're the only guy to ever got a guy internationally into the NFL, which I thought was an amazing move on your part. And if anybody's watching this podcast, I can tell you guys hundreds and hundreds of athletes his firm has handled and done a phenomenal job. There's been very few rejections, very few, unless there was some sort of ban coming from overseas or the State Department said, hey, no XYZ. They're really, and even then, he still got a lot of stuff done that others couldn't do. So he's the man. I just wanted to tell you that. Can't hear you. I don't know if the listeners can, but I'm off on that note. Take care, my bro. God bless you. And if there's anything you guys need, let me know.
Thank you. Let's get it.